Hi, so continuing on this theme of FM deviation, I'm just going to do a little bit of a clear up a little bit of a misnomer. As you know, I'm a radio man, but I'm also a very, very keen CBer. I've been my whole life, and I think the two are quite interchangeable. Most CBs, that you might be used to originally were FM CBs in the UK, so frequency modulation rather than AM or SSB. And it's common to, the terminology got took from one to the other. You're over-modding, you're over-modulating. But I'm going to just address this quick topic, which is that over-modulation is not the same as over-deviation. They're just not the same thing. So most people use the term interchangeably, but they really shouldn't. Modulation is about the audio side, so it's like how much of your voice signal is being fed into the transmitter. So it's the amplification before transmission. So over-modulation means that the audio might be clipping, you're driving the modulator too hard, and the waveform is being flattened at the peaks. That's a distortion problem, and it leads into all kinds of other things then later. Due to the clipping, you get theoretically an infinite number of harmonics, and those can get passed through to the transmitter and cause other issues. But basically it's a distortion problem, over-modulation, so your voice sounds rubbish, processed, clippy. Deviation, by the other flip side, it is what actually happens on air. So it's unique to FM radio. AM, the carrier wave is modulated in amplitude modulation, as you probably remember from your M7s, or reading books like the old Dummy's Guide to CB sort of thing, which were quite cool actually, to be fair. Some pretty good diagrams about the way that deviation works, and it's how far the carrier swings away from the centre when you speak. So you're transmitting on channel 19 on the UK FM, which would be 27781.25, and you've got a 2.5 kilohertz plus or minus deviation. Great. So as you speak, it goes up to a maximum of 2.5 kilohertz above the carrier frequency. This is the kicker, is that you can over-modulate without over-deviating. If your deviation adjustment is set incorrectly, or turned down too far, your audio could be clipping internally, you over-modulate, but the transmitter isn't going to be swinging more than 2.5 kilohertz because the deviation setting is preventing it. It will sound rubbish, but it's not going to be out of spec because you're not going any further than 2.5 kilohertz from the carrier frequency, so you're not going to bleed into the other channels, as we used to call it, bleed over. So the other side is you can be over deviating without clipping, clean audio, but your deviation setting is turned up too far, and the carrier swing is going well beyond the channel bandwidth. So as your voice hits 3-4 kilohertz, if your microphone's got a good dynamic range, that's going to get passed through to the transmitter, and those speech elements are going to make it to 3-4 kilohertz off the carrier frequency, which is into, you guessed it, the other channel. So you can sound perfect to the user, to the other station, but you're actually bleeding all over everybody on the other side, and that's causing splatter and interference and stuff like that. So, and the only way to know if that's a problem is to measure it. You can't do it by ear. There are lots of ways that you can do it, which I'll go into in other videos. There are ways to do it by sort of using receivers and all kinds of different ways of doing it as a DIY sort of effort, but repeatably, accurately, and with confidence needs test equipment. We'll go through that in a series of videos that I'm going to do in the coming weeks. So The only way to know is to test with a deviation meter. Your rig doctor can't do it by just twiddling the pot and saying it sounds good on another rig. It could be diabolical and sound brilliant. So there we go. Okay, see you soon.